Okay, one of the best, I think, aspects about Medicine at College's database basis is we pay a fairly large sum of money to have access to a series of companies that pride themselves rather on being peer reviewed and academic in nature. So any search query where you find information on our essay's subject matter, whatever you choose, we can rest assured that it's been vetted academically, and it is therefore permissible for citing within our own essays. Let's peruse. I'm just here peruse a couple of the databases and do some search queries. So here I am on the library, or sorry, Medicine College's landing page, right? This will look familiar to all of us. And let's go on this center column header and click it on library. Take us to the library, its landing page, and here we are. So you have a number of options. We can search for books, journals, videos, and more just by typing it in here and hitting search. You see someone, I think I searched earlier, Meditations on Reserve Life, bio, societal, and taste of non-sovereignty. Um, or you can actually search for a journal title. That's one way. The best way, I think, so you can actually see all the results, is to search the databases list. They just give you the list from A to Z. So we click on that. So it's a bit overwhelming. There's 124 databases found. That's a lot. So it's sort of that can be challenging to narrow down. So you really have to think about what your subject matter wants to be. So say I picked the subject matter of I know I want to write. I'm sitting down. I haven't done any research. I've sort of brainstormed a bit in my head or maybe on paper of what I want to write about. I know I've narrowed it down to historic, to three things: the indigenous, historic, and language or literature. So I can start with the big topics. These are going to be the big academic topics, right? Not many of them. And these are not articles. There's not 9 English articles. There's 9 databases dedicated to the subject matter of English, dedicated to the subject matter of education, criminal justice, business. I'm going to pick history. It's a fairly large topic. Let's see what we have here. 45, probably the biggest. Looks like it is. 45 databases solely dedicated to the idea of aggregating journals, articles, newspaper articles, um, books on the subject matter, and newspapers on the subject matter of history. So I'll click on that. I was here before. Um, So I know what I want. I can see, I can scroll down, and it's in alphabetical order. I think the best one I found was Biography of Native North Americans. It gives us a small, concise blurb on what it's about. Covers many topics pertaining to Native North Americans, including culture, history, and daily life. The resource is ideal for researching the contributions, struggles, and issues surrounding North American indigenous people. Coverage dates from 16th century till present. Okay, so that has something to do with what I want to my essay, my expository essay to be about, to inform the reader on Native Americans, specifically some of their contributions, which would be literature, right? Which is what I really want to drill down on. So I'm going to click on it. All right, so what that redirects me to EBSCO Host, one of the very most, if not the most popular database out there. It's redirecting us. We pay the fee to be able to access EBSCO Host. When I really start to take a look at the article that I'm going to choose about indigenous people, they're going to ask me at some point for me to enter my Medicine Hat College ID barcode credentials, which you have to do as well, just to prove you're a student, me to prove I'm an instructor, right? So you can come down here. You can choose your dates, a range of dates, full text, uh, find all search items. I'm going to do that. Find any of my search terms. So say if I mention the historical language of indigenous North American peoples within literature, right? So it would come back with all, if I click on find any of my search item terms, it would come back with any of that. If it was able to find information, articles on any word that I mentioned within my search query, it's going to bring back a result, which will be a ton. It would be a lot. Um, so I'm just going to do all. I want anything that comes back, a periodical, academic journal, newspaper, book. I'm not going to do any dates at this point. I can vet it optically, just looking at it. Let's see. Also, apply equivalent subject matter. That's fine. And let's see. I'm going to type in what I want. And we can already see that it's coming back showing us we have something in here that will apply to my subject matter. Indigenous, let's see, literature. There we Here we go. Hit search. Now we got 1,109 results. It's quite a bit. The more information that you type into this search engine area, the less articles and journal articles and newspapers and periodicals are going to show up. So that's good in some ways, so you can narrow it down, not have to use brute force to go through 1,000 article uh, subjects to figure out if it has anything to do with yours, or titles to figure out if it has anything to do with yours. But it's also, the more information you put in here, the least you get back. You're going to start getting down to the more specific you are, get down to the level of 0 or 1 article out there that has everything to do with your subject matter of your essay. Let's look at this. This is the one I wanted to look at. Voices. I read through the first couple. I'm like, nah, that doesn't. Yellow Medicine Review, a Journal of Indigenous Literature. That seems pretty good. We're probably going to come back to that. But let's move to this one, number 4. Voices. I wanted in Australia's Aboriginal and Canada's First Nations literature. So now I'm really starting to formulate a thesis statement in my head. I'm like, wow, okay. Maybe I could read this article. It could be one of my secondary sources. So I'll choose my subject matter to be, I'll craft it towards doing a compare and contrast of the Aboriginal Australians and the sort of the First Nations of North America, and see how they compare and contrast, right? Because we said that's one way to enter this phase of expository essay writing, is to compare and contrast. So I'm looking at, see if this has a year, because we don't want it to be outdated. That's another good point. You can see right here we have a range of dates. We can close the range to make it more contemporary, the writing more contemporary, the subject matter more contemporary and urgent, which is better. So I would say I'm not going to click on this. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to vet it optically when I enter the article to see what year it actually was published. But I would say last 10 to 20 years, or sorry, 15 to 20 years, you want your article to be written, had been written. So it's the information is more urgent, it's more contemporary, it's up to date. So I'm not going to even click on the PDF yet. I want to click on this to read the abstract. And all the abstract is, every article should have one. All the research within here, journal articles, and everything that's been researched should have a journal article. Or sorry, an abstract. My apologies. Should have an abstract just describing what it's about. And it's important to read the abstract, because what you don't want to do is this. You don't want to read, I don't know, 15 and 20 pages and then realize it has nothing to do with what you're writing on your expository or your later essays. So this article provides 2 examples of writing in which the authors examine the challenges faced by Indigenous authors in depicting elements of their respective cultures. In the first example, a novelist from Nyungar, Aboriginal Australian ethnic group, discusses aspects of community which exist within his tribe and explores ways in which collaboration between Indigenous and non-Indigenous can help foster that sense of community. The second piece, written by a short story writer from the Haisla group, a First Nation people in Canada, analyzes elements of meaning and understanding that can be interpreted by readers of Indigenous literature. Okay, so these are both great topics. So I got the Nyungar, or sorry, Nyungar. I'm going to copy and paste this, because we're going to have to define who these people are, where they come from in the region. If I choose this as a subject matter, I'm acting like, yes, I am going to use this as a subject matter. And I just noticed this too. This is great. Look at this. You could email these individuals. You wanted to interview them on the phone or through email. You could easily do that. That'd be one of your secondary sources right within your essay. So I'm going to email Kim Scott, ask her to give me a few questions after I read this article for clarification, or just to get a quote from her, right? Like a journalist, you're calling someone up out of the blue and just ask them a few questions, because it's always stronger to get their voice from an interview than it is, say, from an article that we're reading from. But typically, we only have access to the journal articles, right, through the made available through the databases. But that's interesting. I've never seen this before, where you can actually email them. Think about that. Look out for that. All right, so now I want to look at the PDF to read further to see if this has something to do with this is information, just needed to scroll past, back down to the abstract. This abstract is more specific than the other one. But what I want to do is I want to search on that tribe. So I'm going to hit Control F. I'm going to search for Noongar. All right. Looks like there's 10 listings of Noongar. And I'm going to read them to find out if they have anything to do with defining who Noongar is in some way. Right. I write for the land of the Noongar. I am a writer, writing in a language we share, and yet wish to speak of what it has meant to me as an indigenous literary writer to work with ancestral language, although I have been perhaps remain linguistically displaced. So this is describing Kim Scott, the land of the Noongar. If we needed to, we're going to quote from this part where Kim Scott talks about Noongar. We say, according to Kim Scott, a researcher on indigenous people, says that her tribe, they're writing from the land of the Noongar, quote, right, unquote. Just background information. Then we'd have to keep searching for if there's anything that defines Noongar, a group of Noongar people trying to resuscitate our language under the guidance of a different linguist. All right, so that doesn't really give me much. Let's see. Now their informants have passed away, and in some parts of Noongar Nation, our tongue has withered, dried, and turned to dust. I believe the language indigenous to this place must surely be its finest cultural expression, the utterance of it, the very center of our identity. So that's some information that I might want to include within my essay. The other one was the one I copy and pasted to define these terms that are going to be ambiguous. We're not going to understand it. And this is the compare and contrast, right? We're comparing Canadian to Australian indigenous people. So this is the Canadian one. Kim Scott was the Aboriginal. So we get the Haisla. So it only mentions it 4 times, and most of them don't impart any information. So that would be a great opportunity if you do an internal search. You can't find anything, you find something, it's not really clarified. You got to reach out and you got to use databases to actually drill down on the specific word of Haisla for to define the tribe, or to define any term that you can't find. Or you could turn to what we're going to look at in a minute, Google search. Google search or Google. I like to use Google Scholar. Some people would denounce it, but it's a good place to start. We'll talk about that in a moment. Doesn't mean we're going to stick with Google Scholar. So, but we'll look at that in a moment. You can see here that the date of this was written and published 2011. So that's contemporary, 9 years ago. So they didn't define Haisla for me. I'm going to have to find it somewhere else. If I want it in the first part of my essay, I want to define what these tribes are in comparing and contrasting them together. Okay. Let's go ahead and look at how we can cite this. You can't see it because I didn't fully include it when I did the screen capture here, but to the right side, you have many options. If you say, yes, this article has everything to do with my subject matter, I really want to use a couple paragraphs from it to quote or paraphrase or summarize, maybe summarize the whole thing. So I want to keep it, I want to save it. You can print it, which is unadvisable because you're going to find articles that could be in the hundreds. Email it. It's closer to what I would want to do for myself. I would do a couple of different things. I would email it to myself and keep those emails in a certain folder, make a folder for research of expository essay, right? Or you can create a folder online here, and finally, you could just create a works cited page for yourself, right? So I could just click on cite, and as you can see here, it cites all different types of style formatting. So AMA, APA, Chicago, Tribune, Harvard again, and this is what we want. We want MLA, and this is the works cited entry that we're going to use. It already has the hanging indent. All you have to do is copy and paste it into your works cited page, and then you're done with this. You're done with having that your works cited created for you. Then you'd have to alphabetize it, of course. You have to lowercase her last name Scott to just uppercase S, lowercase everything else. But all the information is here. And then you can even write a quick blurb next to it or copy and paste the quotes that you want to pull from that article next to this. And then you know exactly where it came from and how you can put it into your essay. And then there's no problems at that point with regard to underciting or plagiarizing, accidentally plagiarizing, because you already have the information in front of you. You're not searching the last minute, which is what I find sometimes is the issue. Students will freak out if you can see they're formulating it in the last minute. And then they lost where it is in the World Wide Web where they cited from, and then you can get into some problematic areas when that happens. Let's back up a couple. There was one I wanted to look at that I didn't read earlier, but it looked like it had a lot to do with the subject matter of my essay, indigenous writing, indigenous literature. This one actually uses that phrase specifically. Yellow Medicine Review, or Journal of Indigenous Literature, Art and Thought. Volume 1. I'm going to go ahead and click on it. We're going to read the abstract together. Let's see. Not much of an abstract. This article reviews Volume 1 of the journal Yellow Medicine Review, a journal of indigenous literature, art, and thoughts. Okay. Author is Leslie Ballou, 2011, so it's contemporary. Let's go ahead and click on the PDF. So many pages is this? That's about 6 or 7 pages. All right, so I would read when we get to her article, Leslie Ballou, right? You can see that this is the ending, the conclusion of a prior article, and then we get to her article from Trent University. It's a literature with a mandate to express the sacred voice of indigenous writers, artists, and intellectuals on an international level. Great. This seems close to my subject matter of indigenous literature. Its name is extremely significant as there is an area in southwestern Minnesota that the regional Dakota people call Pezahuda Ziza Kaapi Makok, meaning the land where the yellow medicine dug. There's also a river by the same name. All right, so I'd have to read on. I'd have to just read the article because there wasn't much of an abstract. You just got to read the article, or do an internal Control F search on key terms that you believe that you're looking out for in your quest to find information on your research topic. Okay, so here I'm at regular sort of landing page for Google, the search engine, right? And you say I wanted to continue I'm continuing to reach out and find information and research the Haisla tribe that we read about in that article where they're comparing and contrasting the Australian Aboriginal indigenous people to the North American and Canadian indigenous people, and one of them was Haisla, and the other one was Noongar. So I want to get more information on these tribes, right? So I'm going to try to Google Scholar. You can Google Haisla culture just in regular Google search engine, and it might take you forever. In fact, it probably will take you forever to get results that really are academic and peer reviewed and vetted. So I'm just going to type in Scholar in a Google search engine. It's going to take me to Google Scholar. Just click on it. Now we're in Google Scholar. We don't want case law, so don't click that. We don't want patents or anything. And so I'm going to type in Haisla culture. There we go. And here we go. I'm going to filter through these, figure out which one really has to do with my subject matter. Something in between Monkey Beach and the Haisla return of the repressed. So we don't get the full abstract on this one, but it's interesting. It mentions Haisla. Maybe it defines it for us. I'm still looking for that definition of their culture so I can put the background information in my essay. I could read through this. Maybe it would give you the information. If you found a quote just within this abstract, is what they're calling an article preview. That's fine. You don't have to keep reading. You don't have to go in and read the entire article. You can pull it from here. According to the article preview of Something in Between Monkey Beach and the Haisla Return of the Repressed, quote, within the complex system of settler colonialism, then repression as a North American literary trope, unquote, if I wanted to use that. And here's my MLA citation already here for me, right? You can just copy and paste that into you can export it to EasyBib if you have a folder there. You can download it. You can copy and paste it, which I would advise is copy and paste it into a Word document, a works-cited document, right? But what's going to happen is, say I want to read this article. What's going to happen is this. I won't be able to read it in Google Scholar. Most of them are going to be in databases such as Gale, academic, one file, that at some point as a gatekeeper you're gonna have to sign in, and you don't have credentials to sign in unless you subscribe to it, and it's not going to ask you for your Medicine Hat credentials. So what you do then, that's why I say Google Scholar is a great place to start. I think it's quicker than the databases, but you always have to return to the databases. So I'm going to copy the title. I'm going to go back to our handy dandy library search. I'm just going to search directly in here and see what comes back. Hit enter, if anything. And look, something did come back. So this is going to be free, right? Because I pay money to Medicine Hat College, who pays money to these gatekeepers for these databases, so we have access to them. Right? Something in between Monkey Beach and the Haisla Return of the Repressed. It's an interesting title. I don't see an abstract, so I'll click on it. And this is going to happen often. When you click on here, you're like, well, where's my article? I don't see it. Well, you have lots of options. So I'm just going to click on the first one. And it's offering me the text now, right here, the PDF. So I'm going to click on the PDF. I still don't see an abstract on it. And look, you're not going to get an abstract because this was an article actually from a physical book that they copied. They copied this and then posted it to the database. So it looks like it's 18 pages long. So I just would have to read it. I'd have to read the first couple pages, decide at some point if this has anything to do with the subject matter of my expository essay or my any essay moving forward. I'll say that expository, argumentative, or the final essay. And then you have the same options here. Again, I cut it off on the screen, so maybe you don't see it. You could print the 18-page article. You can mail it to yourself. I suggest that. I suggest doing that and simultaneously uh, accessing or put it in a folder and then simultaneously getting the works cited entry right here, the MLA. And then you should be set for Google Scholar. Again, I think it's a good place to start. Um, you don't want to finish up there, but it gets you hopefully to where you need to go. It whittles down the list better than say Google. And sometimes you don't get the hits that you're going to get within the databases that you're going to get on Google Scholar because it's much more advanced in terms of its feelers that they send the digital feelers that they send out to the digital universe to find articles or anything that you type in the search engine, right? So start there. Start with Google Scholar if you need to. Otherwise, stick to the databases. Uh, but always copy and paste the title when you get to a point that you believe you're going to use it, and then go over to the databases, the search engine within Medicine College's library landing page. Okay, so here we have Wikipedia. Like Google Scholar, many individuals say, well, don't use Wikipedia, but we use Wikipedia every day. Um, I use it, I don't know, I spend at least 3 or 4 hours a day reading Wikipedia articles. Sometimes it's things I'm researching. Sometimes it's things I'm helping other students research. Sometimes it's me just recreationally reading in my leisure time. So it's a great place to start. Like Google is an okay place to start. Like Google Scholar is an okay place to start. Wikipedia is, I think, a great place to start, but it's not a great place to finish. Just like Google Scholar wasn't a great place to finish. We needed to enter that information into our own databases on Medicine Library landing page, right, in order to find the actual article because of the fact that we had to pay something. We would never ever say according to Wikipedia. I think we all know that. According to Wikipedia article, the Haisla people are people who are indigenous to this part of Australia. So we wouldn't do that. We'd go directly to the actual article. So let's type in Haisla people. There we go. Great. All right, so here we are. This is the wiki page for the Haisla people. And I would read it. I would say, wow, okay, they're an amalgamation of two bands, the Kitimat people of Upper Douglas Channel and Devastation Channel, and the Kitlo people of Upper Princess Royal Channel and Gardner Canal in British Columbia, Canada. All right, sorry. I thought these guys were the Aboriginal, Australia Aboriginal. So they're not the actual Canadians. So great. I want to use that, man. I really want to use that. Oh, it doesn't. I can't reference Wikipedia. I can't say according to Wikipedia. So I have to keep searching to find one that has a number next to it, a reference. And this one does, number 2 in the brackets. So the Haisla, I'm going to make sure this is information I can use. I want to define who they are a group of indigenous people that are living at Kitimat Village in the north coast region of British Columbia and have been occupying these lands for at least 9,000 years. Wow. I want to use that. I want to quote that within my essay, my expository essay. I can't say according to Wikipedia, so just click on that number. It takes you to the bottom. It's number 2. Click on that. It takes you to the website, the actual place you want to be able to quote from. The original source. Always quote from the original source. Here we go. Got a great picture. Obviously, we don't use pictures within our essays, but it does give you that information. The meaning of their name, where they live, how long they live there, their past history, their culture, their food, their shelter, their livelihood. And now we got information we start quoting. And this website would actually be who I quote. According to Haisla Nation's website, Haisla people, the meaning of the term is translated to dwellers downriver. And they've occupied lands for 9,000 years. Right? And maybe I'd summarize some of this, paraphrase. That I would put. And that would be the perfect example of finding a Wikipedia article and then finding the reference at the bottom of the Wikipedia article. Where are we? And then using that so we can use it. Because if you read the Wikipedia article and it has no references and it has everything to do with what you want to write about, but you realize to yourself, I can't use it. It was great information that you assembled, but I can't use it because it's a Wikipedia article. Well, that's erroneous thought process. You could just go to the reference at the bottom and go to the original source, which is what we were able to do here. So we looked at Google Scholar, we looked at Wikipedia, we were able to look at the databases on Medicine Library's website, their landing page. Now we're going to look at other strong websites that we can, because surely it's not just our sources aren't just to be purely academic. There's some worthy other websites that exist out there. Just like when we looked at that Hazla website for the Hazla culture, right? That wasn't from a database, right? But it took us to a really good landing or a page where it really gave some good information on the Hazla culture and their history. So we'd want to use that. We want to be able to use that. So that comes down to a few things. One, just visually vetting. You're visually vetting the website. And we're looking for a number of things, but first we're looking for edu.edu. It's an educational website from a university or college. Those are always great. They impart good information sometimes, or they can lead to links that impart really good information. .orgs are pretty okay, I would say. They're strong websites. Any .gov, I think .gov is American. It might be Canadian too. I can't, or maybe it's .ca in Canada for their government websites. But I know Stats Canada has some really great information. Almost every essay, as we start to get deeper into the semester, individual site Stats Canada, that's great. The only problem with the only problem really with these these four top bulletized website options is we don't always get an author. So say we're on Stats Canada, and I reviewed this before. You're not always going to find an author that says, according to Stats Canada article, there's over 6,000 Hazla people that live within British Columbia, right? I'd want to use that as a stat to give them background information again, right? But you can't find an individual that actually wrote that article. That's fine. You'd have to use the shortened version, right? The abbreviated version of the article title that was on Stats Canada. It will have a title, right? And then that has to be your in-text citation, whatever the title of that article was. And if it's really long, then narrow it down to the first three words for your in-text citation. And then that, of course, corresponds to the long title on your works cited page. Any peer-reviewed journal that we looked at the ones online. Some of them actually were the physical copied version, so that was interesting. But most of them were digital. And they were all peer-reviewed. If you use the databases, they're all going to be peer-reviewed. Most newspapers. Some are skewed, however, towards politics and opinion rather than offering objective news. So bear that in mind. Once you get to, if you maybe you Google or you Google Scholar a topic, say I'm still sticking with my Hazla culture, comparing and contrasting Hazla to the Noongar culture of Australia, and I Google it, and I end up on, say, a Fox News website, and I could see 100% completely that they're skewed towards disliking outside cultures, right? And I know for sure that's not a source that I want to use. But most newspapers aren't like that. Most newspapers will be they will not be subjective. They won't editorialize. They will be objective and journalistic in nature. Most databases, especially the ones we looked at, the ones listed on Medicine Library landing page, are going to be 100% completely fine, vetted sources for us to use within any essay moving forward. Okay, in our quest to find sources, we're going to run across strong, or what I call, strong websites, and then we're going to run across medium websites. And medium, they're okay. You start with those. Maybe they point you towards the original source, the original citation. Maybe some of the information is okay within the medium website, but surely there are some problems starting to mount. I'm okay if you use them, just as long as you vet it personally, by looking at it and reading it and realizing that they don't have a dog in the fight. They're not trying to persuade you. They aren't sort of skewing politically or towards anything. They're not. So if I was still continuing with the Hazla topic that I want to write on, the Hazla versus the Noongar indigenous tribes, they're not disparaging on one over the other. That would be a red flag. Most magazines are fairly good sources of information for the expository essay, especially. I say especially because magazines they give good information. I mean, if I was writing, I used to get Runner's World magazine. If I picked an article out of there, that's a magazine, right? If I was writing on an expository essay of how the elements of running, right? I could pull an article out of there because these are experts in the field that contribute to Runner's World magazine, right? But I think once we start to get to the semester progresses, we're going to try to stay away from the medium and then stick with the strong because our academic writing should become more solid. and more profound as the semester unfolds. The second bulletized point here: websites that offer good, seemingly bona fide. So seemingly bona fide, they seem like these are bona fide outlets and information, but with not enough attribution and citation. You should seek out original source at that point. So if they just glance over mentioning something from another source, I would go to that other source and get the full amount of information. And then as we get to the medium depths of websites and into the bad depths of websites, we can start to see they have some advertisements, some monetization of its digital footprint. It's you're going to be hard pressed to not find a website today that doesn't have some level of monetization of its digital footprint. That's going to have some level of advertisement, right? So just think about that. The websites that do the most of this monetization, they get worse and worse. They're going to start becoming skewed towards some sort of ideology, and we want to avoid those. Okay, just a couple more slides here. We got the bad websites, and listen, these aren't completely like bad. I get so many papers, and I just like to come up that access these, and then they use this to start off as a springboard into their essay. They start out right away just defining something. You could define it, but I really find something academic or a person that's an expert on this subject matter, or a website that's an expert, such as Stats Canada, or a government website that's an expert or an authority on this subject matter, not an anonymous, we don't know who they are, WebMD, right? If you're going to write on, I don't know, I think we used the example before, well, multiple sclerosis, the subject matter. You want to inform people on the condition called multiple sclerosis, right? I wouldn't want to use you don't need to use WebMD because there's so much information out there on that subject matter that is a more bona fide source than WebMD. So no WebMD, no generic dictionary.com or Webster's Dictionary, any type of online dictionary. Just avoid it. Go find a better source. Wikipedia is good as a source, as a starting point. That's fine. We don't want to give attribution. We can't want to put within our article, according to a Wikipedia article, multiple sclerosis is a condition that enables the individual to, we don't want to do that. We want to find the original source on Wikipedia by going to the references. WordPress is like a blog. Blogs of any type do not use. We don't know. These people aren't vetted. We don't know how they're authority in the subject matter of what they're writing on. Even if you find it and they have a blurb on themselves, a bio that says, I'm an expert on this subject matter because of X, Y, and Z, it doesn't mean it's true, right? So any website that just doesn't look right, i.e. it seems to skew one way or another with regard to politics, it has a ton of advertisements, so over monetization of its digital footprint at that point. And then a website to avoid too, the last one listed here, it doesn't pass the overall optics test. The website just doesn't look right to you when you look at it, and that could include a number of things. So some things to look out for in order to verify if a website is actually legitimate. Does it have a padlock with the HTTPS that we always see? The padlock says it's safe. Check the contact page. Check to see if they have any point of contact, i.e. email, brick and mortar address, or phone contacts, etc. That is a hard giveaway for if they're real or not, legitimate or not. Check whether the company has a social media presence. Most legitimate websites all have some sort of social media presence, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Look for spelling or grammatical mistakes. Is there a false sense of urgency? This is a dead giveaway for a fraudulent website. If there's grammatical mistakes, it's not been edited or vetted in any way by their own internal people. And then if they're attempting to persuade you to do something, to give you a false sense of urgency, it has to be done right now, to act in some way or do something. If they're attempting to persuade you, they have a dog in the fight. They're being subjective and not objective. They're not being journalistic at that point. They're attempting just to sell something, advertisement, and their digital footprint, maybe a product. Know the obvious signs of website malware. So this would be websites that contain web defacement attacks. Suspicious pop-ups will be a dead giveaway for an illegitimate or a fraudulent website. And advertisements that attempt to entice you to click on them typically are indicative of malicious websites egging you on to download and execute some malware in your system. So be wary of websites that redirect you to other sites with promotional content or to a legitimate looking page asking you to enter sensitive information. That's not just for the English 252 class, that's in general, just in life. Always exercise caution when clicking on any ads. I remember I used to have this, I can't even find it anymore, but this screenshot of a website, and it seemed legitimate when you Googled the information. It was on a topic for an essay. So I Googled information, I saw a website showing students, in the PowerPoint, This looks like a legitimate website. We click on it, it has some good information, and then these pop-ups start just going all around the banner, all around the sides of the website. One of them was like a cartoon version of Barack Obama. He was president at the time, and he's pointing towards these mortgage rates that's on a sign that he's holding. It's like Barack Obama can get you a good mortgage rate if you act now, right? So then you realize, okay, they're attempting to persuade you and to sell you something, and we need to avoid those. Okay, so questions, as always. Please email me if you have any questions or concerns or points of clarification. Reminder number one, I'll email instructions along with the link to this lecture detailing how to upload your final personal essay to Blackboard. And just looking at the schedule, that is due by midnight tomorrow, or midnight today. You're looking at this lecture today. Due by midnight, Monday night. And reminder number two, start narrowing down your topic for your expository essay, because the rough draft is due, date is October 2nd by midnight that day. Okay? So email me if you have any questions. Thanks a lot. Talk to you guys later. Bye.